Good day, colleagues. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Johanna. I'm from the UN Innovation Network, and we're happy to welcome you back to this mini-series on the UN Innovation Toolkit that we've been running. Those of you who have been part of the Innovation Network for a little bit longer, you will already be familiar with the Innovation Toolkit. It is a resource that was developed upon request of the Secretary General by the UN for the UN, and it's specifically designed to meet the needs of UN colleagues wishing to use the toolkit to introduce more innovation in their work. Over the past weeks, we have been running this series, introducing you to the toolkit and diving deeper into the space modules. And we've covered strategy, partnership, architecture, and today we're going to cover culture, leaving only evaluation for next week. And I always say that while I love the SPACE acronym and the theme and the visualizations that it offered to us, I'm always a little bit sad that culture comes so far down the line because it is so critical to driving innovation. And if we had found an acronym that had culture at the very beginning, I surely would have gone for that. But that aside, so we're happy that you've joined us for exploring how to drive a culture of innovation today. As usual, we're going to hear a short introduction to the toolkit and the module in general, and then we'll let you pick which tool you'd like to learn more about. If you have any questions, use the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. It's at the bottom of your screen. Vote on questions that other people have asked to help us prioritize. And because it tends to be the most popular question, the webinar is being recorded and we're going to make it available in the webinar library afterwards and also send you an email. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to our presenter for the day. Just one today. Those of you who have joined previously would be used to seeing Baron and Paula. Today it's just Paula because Baron is on leave, but we're in very good hands here. Paula is an associate fellow at the UN System Staff College, and she is in charge of supporting entities in using the toolkit and also scaling it up. So she really knows the toolkit better than most people out there. Thanks for being with us today, Paula. We're excited to have you. I'm handing over to you.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive introduction, Johanna. It's great to be with all of you this week with the culture model once again. And as other sessions, we would like to begin by asking you this question. Did you join any of our UN Innovation Toolkit webinars so far? And right now, you can see the poll in front of you. I see that almost all of you have answered the poll. Just 2 people missing.
Yes, come on, we can get those 2 people.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Okay. Well, actually we have 50%. So 50% did join other webinars on the UN Innovation Toolkit, and 50% of you are new in this webinar series. So let us continue by doing a recap for all of you who actually did not join the other UN Innovation Toolkit webinars. The first feature that we are actually really encourage you to undertake when you first log into the UN Innovation Toolkit, it's diagnostic, as it evaluates the team, unit, and organization readiness to innovate. Once you have answered the 27 questions, you're provided with an innovation profile and detailed results. And it gives you also your strengths as well as areas of improvement with 5 recommended tools. So we'll go really quickly through the diagnostic to show you how this works. And as you can see, you're encouraged. Well, you have to choose a diagnostic perspective. The most popular one is the team. And here you will have questions that we encourage you to undertake with your team, unit, or organization, and to encourage conversations and discussions. The question 1, for instance, is: my team knows what resources and capabilities we need to achieve our goals. After a discussion, I can agree with this statement. My team has a clearly defined set of goals for innovation, maybe not that much. So as you can see, there are 27 questions and statements that we encourage you to undertake with your team, unit, organization, And after you actually have discussions and conversations around these 27 statements, you are provided with a profile. In this case, I actually answered this diagnostic in a random manner. I have the collaborator profile. Collaborators are strongest at developing partnerships for innovation. Here, you can find a description of the profile, as well as the typical strengths of that profile and risks, with further guidance. After you have explored the profile, you are also provided with detailed results. These detailed results are around the SPACE framework. As Johanna has kindly shared with us before, the SPACE framework is formed with the strategy, partnerships, architecture, culture, today's webinar, and evaluation models. And it gives you scores around these 5 critical pillars for innovation. These scores are also, you can also see a justification of that score, showing you your weaknesses as well as strengths in each module. And after you explore the scores in the 5 modules, you are also given with 5 specific recommended tools, and it's a way to initiate the interventions with the specific tools of the toolkit, as we have, and we're going to see now, 21 UN-derived tools. Here's a big picture of what the toolkit is. We have already seen the diagnostic with the 27 questions. We have 21 UN-derived tools that include step-by-step directions, worksheets, and UN case studies for you to contextualize the tool. And as already explained, we have the strategy model, the SPACE framework with the strategy model, partnership, architecture, culture, and evaluation model. The culture module has 4 tools that in today's webinar we will see together. And now, let us share with you the link for those who want to navigate through the toolkit right now together in this webinar, as well as a QR code that you can scan with your phone. And also, we want to share with you this UN System Staff College free course for all UN staff on innovation. And here you can find critical concepts and practices, and they are all linked to the UN Innovation Toolkit. So we also encourage you to try this free course for all of you, and yes, explore further concepts on innovation. And today we'll be focusing in the culture model. And let us begin by explaining why culture is important. Culture, well, organizations that hope to truly embed innovation into their DNA must create a culture that provides opportunities, skills, as well as incentives to innovate. And therefore, culture is highly important for innovation. It's actually needed to embrace in this disruptive journey because innovation involves inherently risks. And employees, for instance, must understand the circumstances under which they are able to take risks and how to capture learning through the process, because many times through this innovation journey, there are failures, and failures are also an opportunity to grow and to learn. And also, it is highly important as in order to get into this journey of innovation, we have to effectively engage governing bodies and communicate their innovation, our innovation activities. This is equally important as we have to bring on board potentially risk-averse groups, both within and outside our organization. And what will this culture model of the UN Innovation Toolkit bring to you? Well, first of all, it will help you to establish a culture of learning based on both innovation successes, but also failures. It will provide guidance on identifying what constitutes acceptable risk limits within your team, unit, or organization. also to create incentives for taking strategic risks through innovation, and to understand how to effectively engage governing bodies. Well, now let's get into the the 4 UN-derived tools that you can find in the culture model. The first one is embrace failures. Failures are, as already explained, inherently in the innovation process, and this tool helps users to celebrate, discuss, and use failures to drive learning that accelerates innovation efforts. The objectives of this tool is to establish methods for learning from innovation failures, understand the type of failures that offer the greatest opportunity for learning, and cultivate a culture that expects, because indeed failures happen, accepts, and openly discusses failure as a core element of the innovation process. Before you begin to use the tool, you're encouraged to identify innovation projects that have either recently begun or not started yet, to consider using this tool together with your team or key stakeholders from your unit to determine best cadence for collecting, sharing lessons learned, as well as to reflect on how well your organization embraces innovation failures. Once you have undergone through this process, that is of course recommended, you will get into the tool, and this tool has 3 main steps. The first step is to consider specific types of failure in innovation for learning purposes. There are 4 main types of failures, and it is important to understand opportunities for learning from each of them. Then you will have to establish a framework and timing to document lessons learned. This, of course, depends on the scope, timing, as well as the complexity of your project. And finally, you will have to identify methods for sharing lessons learned. This is equally important as to communicate lessons learned and failures, as is a really critical part of this learning loop. And then there's a case study, of course. And this case study is of the SVG lab in Geneva, Switzerland, which uses failure reports to communicate and build transparent relationship with donors. Then let's go to the second tool, which is create incentives and opportunities. As already mentioned as well, incentives and opportunities can play a key role in shifting innovative behaviors. And this tool helps users brainstorm behaviors that would support the specific needs of that project, and then to choose incentives and the opportunities to encourage the desired behaviors. Therefore, the objectives of this tool is to refine your innovation goal and identify desired behaviors to support that goal, and then to choose incentives and opportunities to encourage innovative behaviors. Before you begin, this tool suggests that you should have experience with the individual project or team you are seeking to motivate, to engage with them before actually implementing the tool. And then it would also be helpful to familiarize yourself with the organization's performance management guidance. However, this is not required. It's just if you have the chance, it's a suggestion from the tool. And then there are 4 main steps that you will have to undertake with this tool. The first step is to write down your organization's innovation goal statement, considering a set of questions to help you document and refine your innovation goal. This set of questions, you can of course find them in the tool. Then the second step is to start your action plan by brainstorming the behaviors you need and to achieve your innovation goal. Then the third step would be to find key moments to reinforce those desired behaviors, and finally choose incentives and opportunities for those desired behaviors. Here we have also a case study that is from the Division of Conference Management of the United Nations Office at Geneva, which encouraged staff-led innovation by setting up a rotational in-house innovation team. Let's go to another tool. Well, this tool, of course, it's critical as it is needed to understand the risk tolerance of our organization, even if of our unit. It's not the same to work for, to actually build a project for administrative purposes or to a project that will impact end users. So this tool helps users define the best ways to take risk in their organization, given its unique culture and risk tolerance. Understanding these risks is critical, and the objectives of the tool are to understand the organization risk culture and to identify strategies to engage peers and managers on risk to bring on board these risk-averse groups. There are also, of course, some suggestions before you begin using the tool, like to identify an innovation goal for which you need to gain support, to review your organization's strategic plan or plans, and also you're also encouraged to use this tool and the portfolio strategy tool beforehand to better understand your organization's risk appetite and innovation ambitions. With this tool, you will go through 3 different steps. The first step is to estimate your organization innovation risk tolerance, after which you will have to identify innovation management strategies that align with your organization risk tolerance that you have already identified in step 1. And finally, tailor strategies for your own situation. This is you can customize a combination of best strategies and set specific goals for the next 30, 60, 90 days. This is an example, but of course, this depends on your own context, situation, and project. And there's also a case study that's define risk and use strategic funding to achieve their innovation goals. Well, we don't have the name of the UN entity, but there's a case study that you can, of course, log in and review to contextualize the tool. And finally, a popular tool as well is engage governing bodies, because a highly important aspect of innovation culture is to have governing bodies on board and to communicate effectively your innovation efforts and activities. And this is also highly linked to the last tool, because we need to have all groups on board, even the risk-averse ones, and to engage governing bodies is crucial. Therefore, objectives of this tool is to explore different ways to engage governing bodies and gain buy-in for your innovation efforts, as well as plan for your next engagement with a governing body, whether through formal, informal, in-person, or virtual channels. So it explores different ways of engaging as well as modalities. Before you begin, you're encouraged to identify the governing body you want to engage, as well as any required engagement protocol. This is important in the sense that you will have to adjust the language depending on this situation. You're also encouraged to use the life cycle analysis tool in order to consider the maturity of your innovation projects across the innovation life cycle. And once you have you want to put in practice this engage governing bodies tool, you will have to undergo through 3 different steps. The first step is define why you want to engage the governing body. This is, it seems a really basic question, but it's really important to outline the reasons for that specific engagement with the governing body, as well as to review any previous interactions with this governing body to find also lessons learned and successes. Also, the second step is craft your message. Compose the core message you want to convey to the governing body, as well as the main takeaways about your innovation. And the last one is, how would you like to engage with the governing body? Here you will have to consider the different channels available and the ones that best fit the situation and the relationship with the governing body. There's also a case study from the World Bank group. Actually, you can see here how they went through the engagement process with their governing bodies to garner support for a new disruptive technology strategy. And well, these are the two most popular tools in the culture model. We have received positive feedback from both of them. And based on this positive feedback, we want to undergo through a really exciting part of this webinar. We want to make you the ones that we want to give you the opportunity to actually decide where do you want to continue. Thank you very much, Johanna. You have here the poll. So you will decide if we will go into one tool or another.
And
Okay.
I always like to ask Baron which one he thinks it's going to be. I have a favorite. What is your favorite? Which one? Oh, actually, and as I'm saying that, there's two people who haven't voted yet, but come on, we need your vote because we have an even situation. Paula, which one's your favorite?
I really like embrace failures. I think it's critical for an innovative culture, but let's see what our participants prefer.
Just 53% for embracing failures.
Oh, it was really tight, but great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Johanna.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay, let's go to embrace failures then. You have decided this tool, so let's delve into it. The first step of embrace failures is to consider a specific type of failures in the innovation process for learning purposes. So there are four main types of failures, as already discussed before, that are simple errors, aha moments, calculated risks, and bold failures. Well, here we have the error matrix that we have a brief description of all the type of failures here, as well as the relationship with the anticipated level of risk, as well as the relative opportunity for learning. Let's begin with the simple errors. Simple errors are understood as the ones that are avoidable, the ones that we can make in a daily basis, and that they actually don't bring a huge opportunity for learning. However, if these type of errors are repeated often, there might be some opportunity to actually learn from perhaps a process that is not working properly or efficiently. We also have other type of failures, such as aha moments. These failures have a low anticipated level of risk. However, they have a huge opportunity for learning. These aha moments are, for instance, when you actually have the right processes, however, they don't end in the result or the outcome that you weren't expecting, or solving the project that you were not expecting. So there's huge room for learning there. And if we go to bold failures, there's also huge room to learn from this type of failures, but also there's a high anticipated level of risk. Why? Because these bold failures are normally happen when we have a new and a disruptive project that they perhaps don't have an existing roadmap for success. Therefore, we actually expect this type of failures in this type of projects, but the failures are considered really positive as they bring a lot of learning and information for future projects. And then we have the calculated risks, which they have a high anticipated level of risk, as they are known potential risks, but they are expected as unlikely, and there's a low opportunity for learning, and it could be, for example, a failure due to an external event. And once we have undergone through this first step, we will be ready to go into the step 2, that is establish a framework and timing to document lessons learned. For this, we have a worksheet, the so-called Innovation Checkpoint worksheet. This worksheet helps you to work to document lessons learned throughout the innovation lifecycle, from the ideation phase, the first one, to the last phase, that is the scale phase. In this sense, you are encouraged to put down throughout discussions with your team a checkpoint frequency, and this checkpoint frequency may depend on the scope, on the timeline, and the complexity of your project. And this is highly helpful because it supports you to distinguish between cause and effect. And let's see the worksheet. Here we can see how the worksheet looks like with already with some answers here. You'll have to put the name of the innovation project, briefly describe the innovation project, and then you have a key decision timeline where you have to put the checkpoints where you want to discuss and identify lessons learned and failures. And for each checkpoint, you should then fill these lessons learned boxes. The first one is you should answer what failed in the specific checkpoint, what worked, what do we plan to change immediately, and what have learned about our audience and about ourselves. So we should undergo through this process with all the checkpoints identified, and then we would go to the step 2.1. because it's part of the last step, but it's the final project review and it has another worksheet, the so-called Innovation Review Report worksheet, where you can include the lessons learned documented in all the completely checkpoints, and then you can have or create an assessment on the success and failures of the innovation activity. And this can lead to high-level takeaways, which are highly appreciated and useful to inform future innovation activities. Here you can see the worksheet, and for each checkpoint, you can, through discussions with your team, unit, organization, you can determine if it was a success or a failure. If you actually determine that this was a failure, you have to discuss what type of failure was in order to see the type of learning you can take from here. And once these two questions have been answered, you're encouraged to draft some key takeaways. And then let's go to the last step, that is identify methods for sharing lessons learned, that this is equally important. As already explained, communication here is crucial with failures and lessons learned. And to cultivate a culture that values and normalizes learning from the past innovation efforts, as already said, how to communicate and discuss lessons learned is a critical pillar. We also encourage you to use the innovation storytelling tool that we will explain in our next webinar that is found in the evaluation model. And here there are some different tactics that you may want to introduce in your team, in your unit, or in your organization. And there these different tactics vary from less accepting of failure to more accepting of failure. For example, if we don't have a huge a culture of failure, we can start with failure Fridays. This failure Fridays tactic is, for instance, to have weekly meetings Fridays, for instance, to discuss success, failures, and areas of confusion within your team. And these are casual, informal conversations that offer a safe space for staff to learn from one another and to normalize conversations around failure. And an example of this can be found in UNICEF, which holds Failure Fridays in groups of 5 and 10 professionals in a weekly manner. Then we have Fail First. It's similar to Failure Fridays, but it's more formal and in a larger scale. This may involve a whole organization or even a multi-stakeholder initiative. And in 2012, we can actually find an initiative between the UNDP, UNICEF, World Bank, and the World Food Program, which participated in a fail fair to discuss past experiences with internal and external partners. And then we have failure reports. As the SDG Lab illustrates, these are more formal, they're permanent, and this involves a higher acceptance of failure as they are public records that detail the failure experience and outline lessons learned. These are normally shared with other stakeholders such as donor partners, affiliates. And then we can go to the codifying lessons learned into guiding principles. This actually involves a larger, a big leadership support indeed, as these success and failures can be translated into guiding principles for all future innovation efforts. And an example is the principles of digital development that have been endorsed by several members of the UN system. And then as a last option, that this would involve a high level of acceptance of failure, is including failure as a metric in the dashboards of evaluation of different initiatives. So these are just some examples of how you can start embracing failures within your team, unit, or organization. And thank you very much. With that, actually, I'm happy to share that this culture webinar the presentation has concluded, and now it's your turn if you have any questions on culture and the UN Innovation Toolkit.
Thank you, Paula. Wonderful presentation. It is such an important module. And when we started working on the toolkit, I was a little bit scared of trying to develop tools that would help drive culture, because it was such a unique thing. But I really think the team behind the toolkit has done such a great job finding tools that are relevant and universally applicable. We all need to talk about failures. We all need to create incentive. We all need to engage our governing bodies. So really well done to everyone who was part of it there. I do have a question here. I think you touched upon it already, but colleague is wondering, how do donors respond to failure and how can we socialize it to them? And I'm guessing the undertone is donors probably don't like it if monies that have been given to UN entities do not end up leading to successes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Indeed, and that's why we really focused on communication. And communication is crucial in how we actually transmit the message of this is not just a failure. This is a really highly valuable learning experience that we will be able to apply in different pilots or in different projects. And therefore, for instance, the SDG Lab actually uses failure reports to really communicate in a formal but also comprehensive manner failures and lessons learned, to also influence the attitude of donors regarding this type of failures, as of course we know that they are inherent in the innovation process.
Absolutely, and I love the example that you've given there. So the SDG Lab, I think they have indeed published it, right? With their donor, they have a commitment to publish a report on what worked and what hasn't worked, and thereby bring the donor member along on that journey. So really good example. And I also love the different degrees of talking about failures that are outlined in the specific tool. And I guess this related to the next question that we've seen here. Surely this doesn't apply to any failures. Not all failures are alike. And I'm guessing that's where the different layers of communication come in again. Can you speak to that, Paula?
Of course, as we have actually shared, like there's a different type of failures, and each failure has different learning experiences. There are some failures, of course, as simple errors that we may have in our day-to-day basis that may not be translated in huge amount of information for learning loops in our organization. However, if like, for example, the SG, I would love to quote the SG right now, as he says, let's take smart risks. So this involves this message. The failures that we are talking about are failures that involved a planning, that involved an analysis of the risk tolerance of our organization and the end users, and that those failures will involve, of course, some learning behind. So yes, let's get into innovative projects. Let's make innovation the UN normal, but let's also plan behind and engage in an efficient manner with the stakeholders. I'm not sure if this has answered the question.
I think it absolutely resonates. And if you can quote the SG to answer a question, then it must be correct, right? And maybe just to add, I think we're always looking to pilot and fail on a small scale. So we're not trying to just launch a multi-million-dollar program and then realize a year later that we failed. That is not a good failure. That's not the kind of failure we're encouraging here. What we're encouraging is the small failures. So have an idea, go out, test it early, learn from that, fail from that, discard the idea or change it completely or build on what you have learned. And these are the kinds of failures that we're encouraging in the tool. So thanks for that. I'm going to leave an awkward pause here because we're out of questions for this one. And I'm going to see if anyone has another one that they would like to put to Paula. And if not, awkward pause. If not, I realize also, Paula, I put you in a difficult spot. We're on the last spot for European time, so it's almost the end of the workday. So apologies for that.
Yeah. No, it's a great way of ending the day.
It is a great way of ending the day. So I think with that, colleagues are out of questions. So I'm going to say thanks to you for joining us, for standing in for Baron and doing this so phenomenally by yourself. I think we can tell Baron that he can stay on leave. And I think we're seeing you again next week when we're talking about evaluations. All right, the last one in the toolkit series.
Exactly, the last one. So looking forward to this evaluation module and the last webinar of this series that have been already, I think that 3 months since we started. So looking forward.
It has been a long time. We're looking forward to bringing the show home then. And with that, Paula, wishing you a good evening to Madrid and everyone on the line, a good day and good evening to you. And we'll see you next week.